Hi, and welcome to this episode. There are different forms of leadership. One of the most underrated ones is self-leadership. To me, one of the key aspects of self-leadership is the way we carry and conduct ourselves and the manner in which we interact with others, no matter what the situation is in our own personal lives. One such person I've had the privilege of working with and knowing well is Rikke. I've been a huge fan of Rikke for the way she shows up at work, full of energy, a smile, and a positive attitude, and doing so despite all the curveballs life has thrown at her. So this is not a typical leadership interview, but more of an attempt to know Rikke, who she is, her values, her challenges, and the lessons learned, which I hope will serve as inspiration to many of us. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Hi, Rikke.
Hi, Ranjit.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good to
Looking forward
reconnect.
to talk to you.
Good to reconnect after a few years at Novo Nordisk in Molov.
Definitely.
Good. So yeah, like I said, you've been someone who I found very inspiring to work with, as a person, as a colleague, as a friend. So you've been on my list of people to interview for a while, and I'm glad we could find this time to meet and then record this podcast. So thanks for taking time to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm really looking forward to it, and also really enjoy to reflect on live and have a good conversation. So I've been really looking forward to it.
Awesome. So let's get started. It's nice and easy, right? So all the way back to your childhood, because I always believe, like everyone else, childhood has a huge influence on who we are today. So curious to know, what was your childhood like, growing up, and what kind of influence you carried to who you are today now?
Yeah, I think the childhood has a lot to do with who I am today, and I think also in general who people are. In several different ways, I'm sure that both the love for nature, strong values, the need for adventures, and also genuine caring and helping others are very much part of who I am today, and those are founded in my childhood. Mm-hmm. When I was born in Greenland, where my family lived for 4 years. My mom and dad working, and also my older brother Rasmus and our dog. And you could say by the age of 1, I had already been in a Piterak, that's a hurricane in Greenland, with broken glass and Mayday in our wooden ship. And also, I think when I was about 4 months old, my dad dropped my mom and my older brother and I off, in a very distant fjord, and left us for 2 weeks with a tent, food, and an emergency radio. So, that was really part of nature. And I think, even though, that's very early, I think that's, has shaped me, already from when I was just a baby.
Oh.
So, and then you can say my whole childhood has been filled with many different adventures, both summer and winter, pulling a sled and skiing and sleeping in a tent in the snow, hiking in remote areas. Also a lot of biking and sailing. We also sailed home from Greenland. It may sound, fancy with a lot of different, travel experiences, but actually my parents were very, very modest with material things and also, cars. So we drove the oldest, the oldest car. At one point we had an orange car, an orange Volvo, but nobody cared. My dad even took his sister, he was driving her for her wedding in an orange Volvo. So, so they were modest, in material things, but that enabled them and us to actually, go on adventures in an affordable way. So they really prioritized where they wanted to use, you can say the opportunities that we had as a family.
Right. Fantastic. To be honest, I didn't know you were born in Greenland. Now it all kind of makes complete sense, right? With your sense of adventure and the journeys you've been on through life. So it's all there.
So,
okay, very interesting.
And Yeah, and I grew up on well, actually when we came home from Greenland, we lived in Lyngby in just a residential area, but then when we came home from Greenland, my parents wanted to be more out in the open in the nature, so they bought an old farm that needed a lot of rework, but it was a really nice place. They called it the park, and so I grew up with horses and dogs and cats and chickens, ducks and geese, and also we slaughtered the chickens and ducks and geese every year for food over the winter. We had a garden where we harvested and preserved for the winter season. We cut down trees for firewood, so it was kind of like Bonderøven. I don't know if you know that TV program, but I've grown up, in an academic family, but also with a very close touch to nature. And I think when I reflect back on my childhood, and how that has shaped me, I actually came up with many different you can say stories or experiences that helped build up my values, and I can share a couple of those. I mean, one is actually a little funny one. when I was I had my pony Hannibal when I was 5 years old, but by the time I was 11, my feet could touch the ground because he was so little. so we were looking for a bigger pony, and that was down in the southern part of Denmark, and that pony was Hector, and he was loaded onto in the trailer. But then all of a sudden had some kind of an anxiety attack and almost flipped out the front of the trailer. Wow. So we had to pull him out, and we were standing there far away from home with my new pony, and then what to do. And then my mom just said, well, if the horse doesn't want to drive home, then it must walk home. And then for the next 4 days, I was 11, and the girl that I bought it from, Ulla, she was 15, and we rode Hector home 160 kilometers. Wow. And it took 4 full days. And, we just made it up as we went along. My mom found some farms where we could, spend the night. And I think that's one of the experiences that just, taught me to just do it, see the possibilities and just, jump to it and into it and just do it. So that's maybe
that was you, your friend Ulla, and Hector the pony walking on the road.
160 kilometers home, yeah. And when I got back to school, 4 days later, as my teachers asked where I'd been, my mom, she wrote a beautiful poem about the horse and the ride home, and then that was it. They just said, "Well, thank you. Now we understand where Rikke has been." So yeah. So, and it's just an example of, I think really, a way to look at life and just, just do it and look for opportunities instead of limitations.
I can definitely kind of recognize the connection there between this experience and then your kind of, the way you push yourself, right, in sports and so on, that it takes endurance, and to some extent also you need that attitude of just get on with it. So I can really see the connection there.
Yeah, and then there's also a different experience that I thought about from my childhood. My mom, she's both an engineer and also a teacher, and she is. She has always enjoyed helping other people, to make a positive difference in other people's lives. And there was one time when I was a child, then my mom, she went to a speaker event with an organization called Red Barnet in Danish. It's an organization that helps children, across the world. Mm-hmm. And then when my mom came home that night, she just said, we're going to have 2 girls from a foster home in Romania to live with us this summer. She had just made a decision after, hearing that speaker that we were going to take in 2 girls. So a few months later, Sarita and Susanna came from Romania with no possessions. They had really bad teeth. They had some injuries, and they had just come, from facing a very challenging childhood. They came from an orphanage. And that is actually one of those experiences that really helped define my set of values. When Sarita and Susanna came, my parents, they instantly, emptied or went out of their bedroom to give it to Sarita and Susanna so they could get the best and feel really welcome. We took them to the dentist. I taught Sarita how to ride a bike, running after her, keeping the bike upright with a stick until she cracked the code. I mean, she'd never been on a bike before in her life. Oh. And we had a fantastic summer with them. And when they went home to the orphanage in Romania, they left, with a packed bag of personal belongings. They got a lot of love from my family, and I also made a photo album for each with the different experience we'd had together over the summer. And then we didn't know if we would ever hear from them again. But then 20 years later, my parents received a letter from Sarita. That was one of the girls. It was in Romanian, but my mom was working at a school where she taught refugees and immigrants. So she had one of her students translate it. And Sarita was writing to my parents to thank them for taking Sarita and Susanna up when they were children. And that was actually something that had changed her life, and she was doing really well. And just wanted to let them know what a huge difference it had made to her. Oh. So that one is really, it taught me a lot of things, about making a difference for other people, being open. When you have the ability or when you have the resources, you also have the duty to help. So that was, that's actually one of my core values to always help and try to make a positive difference for other people, either on a small scale or on a larger scale.
Yeah, what an amazing story. I think lucky to have been brought up in a family, in an environment like that, right, with such strong values. So fantastic. Are you in touch with Sarita now, or was it the last letter you received from them?
No, that's my parents. They received the letter. They have it. And you haven't heard they don't write back and forth, but it was just, she wasn't really asking, for writing back and forth. She just wanted to let them know that she was actually doing real well, and, that had really made a huge difference for her. So, And also, we also thought about, that's really amazing that she actually held on to, in the photo album, we had also written our names and address, and, she had held on to that photo album, throughout her life, and then took contact. So that was a really nice experience, and also good to know that she was doing well. So
what a story. So moving ahead from the childhood days to, I know you spent some time in the US. Was that an exchange?
Yeah, it actually started as an exchange student. My mom worked for an American company, and both my brother and I were lucky to actually win a year with Youth for Understanding, a year in high school in the U.S. My brother, he stayed on a ranch in Idaho in the late 80s, and I got to stay 1 year in California with my host family in 1991-92. And that was a fantastic experience. I was only 15 when I went there. I think it actually might have been the first time that I had flown, at least, when I can remember. And, I was just, amazed on how they welcomed me. And also, my host family from back then, they're still, my family. We just visited them this summer. And what they really taught me, or one of the things they taught me, they have actually opened up their home 7 times for a foreign exchange student, 1 year at a time. So 7 years in total with foreign exchange students from all parts of the world. And that really taught me something about hospitality. One thing is hosting a dinner, but when you actually host, 7 different foreign students from, 7 different countries over the years, I think that's a fantastically generous on their part. And even in high school, it was, I think my years in the US have actually given me so much perspective on things. For instance, in high school, every morning I actually pledged allegiance to the American flag in history class, and that's just an example. It gave me an opportunity to actually understand the U.S. and its people. that same year, I don't know if you remember or if you have read about it, but it was also the Los Angeles riots with Rodney King. And we also experienced a curfew and racial tension in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. The trial was held in Simi Valley, where I live, and Ku Klux Klan flew in from the Deep South to demonstrate during the trial. So there was a curfew, and we couldn't go out. Wow. So that experience firsthand also gave me some, early awareness about the consequences of, racial tensions and also inequality. Yeah. So that was, a lot of different types of experiences. But, mainly I left that exchange year with just a fantastic experience. And also, you can say the Americans are so outgoing. Mm-hmm. They're very curious about other people. And I think that's one of the things that I brought home with me, that curiosity to meet other people and also learn about other people and cultures. So that was a fantastic year. And just, I feel very fortunate because that year in high school also opened up another door because I was recruited for universities due to my running abilities and results during that high school year. Okay. So I was invited on recruiting trips to universities in the US. And the second place I went was in Arizona at Northern Arizona University. And I just completely fell in love with that place and the people I met. It's also one of the best running schools, NCAA Division I running schools or running programs in the US. Okay. And just a place, with an open mind and a melting pot. So that really appealed to me. And I actually ended up going 5 years to university in Arizona as well. Okay.
So you did was it a bachelor's then in Arizona?
Yes, I took my bachelor's in civil engineering, and then I had 5 years of eligibility. So I actually stretched the bachelor's and filled it out with interesting classes. Okay. Also, again, a little bit of my curiosity. So besides from engineering, I actually studied some U.S. history, geography, anthropology, and American music. So I tried to, broaden my horizon by taking extra classes, outside the engineering curriculum. So I thought that was really fantastic.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So would you advise young kids to try and experience living, studying, working outside their own country?
Definitely. I mean, I think if you can get the opportunity for that, I mean, it doesn't have to be studying, that could also be traveling as a young adult, that could be as an exchange student, working. Yeah, definitely. I think it's so giving to meet people from other countries, to actually be part of a different culture. And it just kind of broadens the perspective. For me personally, it's given friends for life, in many different countries. That's I think that's, personally, almost the best part of it. Yeah, definitely. I think it gives perspective. It was funny, when I left Denmark in the early 90s, there wasn't really that much diversity, in how people looked, it was, and where they came from, it was all very, you can say traditional Danish. So when I came out and, came to the US and just saw this melting pot, I mean, that was a huge eye opener for me, because there were people from everywhere in the world. And the same thing at university. I mean, there were people of many different nationalities and backgrounds, refugee from Somalia, from Canada, Mexico, Jamaica, and also where I lived in Arizona is close to the, now you can't say Native American reservations, but the indigenous people reservations. So I had teammates that were Hopi and Navajo. And I think that is something that I really, carry with me, just a natural, genuine openness and curiosity, and also respect for other people and nationalities. And just feel really fortunate to have met so many different people. We also visited one of my old teammates. He's a Navajo, or actually now they don't call it Navajo anymore. Now it's Diné. That's their own original language. And he also taught me some things, about, they actually, have some spirituality about running towards the sun. He gave us a horned towhead. That's a little one that protects me and my family. So I often think about Tim, my Navajo Diné friend as well, and just a lot of different perspectives in lives, collected from people I've met, and I think everybody should go explore because
completely. Yeah, I've been I've been fortunate to have studied abroad as well. I think it just kind of opens your mind to so many different perspectives, way of thinking, and I think makes you a much more well-rounded person, open and accepting to other ways of thinking and working. So really relate to what you say. So after you finished studying at Arizona State, then did you kind of move on to work life, or did you study further, or what happened after that?
Well, I was in a dilemma, whether I should stay in the U.S. or whether I wanted to go home to Denmark, or maybe something third. But those were the two things I was looking at, because I really love being in the U.S. But what really tipped it for me was to come home and be closer to my family again. I've spent 6 years in the U.S. My brother has spent 5 or 6 years in the U.S. So, my parents also came to visit, but I decided to go home. And also, I didn't feel like I was done doing athletics. So I wanted to continue to do athletics at an elite level. So I decided actually I also got a master's scholarship from the NCAA when I left the US. So I wanted to use that. So I studied a master's degree in civil engineering with emphasis on planning and technology management while I was still living out my sports dream in Denmark at Danish Technical University.
Okay.
So I got the best of both worlds. And then during my study at the DTU, at some point I was recruited by some large consulting companies, and I actually ended up doing an internship with McKinsey, and after that I decided maybe I should get a real job and not just my study job. So I started as a client consultant at Cove Engineering after McKinsey, and that's actually how I started my real work life, you could say.
So I was curious. So how did the interest? So you studied civil engineering. Why civil engineering? How did that decision come about?
That's a good question. But there are actually a lot of civil engineers in my family. Both my grandfathers civil engineers. My father is. One of my uncles, and so I don't want to say I wanted to be like them, but I had seen a lot of work from the construction industry, and the thought about creating something was actually something that appealed to me, and also my thesis in the U.S. was actually on that was a bridge project, because I had a dream of building big bridges, like the biggest ones in the world. Also, Denmark has a strong bridge tradition, so that was actually that was my initial dream by becoming a civil engineer. So that was actually I think that's why I chose that direction. But then, also through sports, I was also interested. I had some really inspiring coaches, not just coaching, but, the way they were with people, the way they included people and how they could develop people. So that has really always been my interest as well, team performance, how you can really, elevate performances. So that was more the leadership part of it. And I guess, sometimes it's maybe a little bit by coincidence which one is your first job, but that actually kind of sets the direction for for at least for part of your work life. So I ended up not building big bridges, but I ended up as a client consultant, and that has Yeah.
What does a
Evolve.
client consultant do?
You can say if within construction, that's how it started. So you can say if you have a client who wants to build, that could be anything from a school to a new headquarter to a medical facility. Then if they're not really an experienced client or builder, then you actually have a client consultant who can take care of it for you. You can say who knows how to do it professionally and can advise you on the whole process.
Okay.
So that's it's more like a management you can say area in engineering.
Right. Okay. So you started off with Covey. You said that was like your first real job in the kind of in the construction industry, and then you've gone through a journey with different companies, and now you've ended up at NREP. What do you do at NREP?
I'm a head of development and construction in the business area called CARE, which is social infrastructure. The main thing that we actually do in Denmark is building care homes. So that appealed to me. NREP. Two things appeal to me. First of all, making a difference. You could say with care homes, and that's a way to solve a demographic challenge with elderly people increasing, and the municipalities are not able to scale up care homes as fast as they need to. So that could be, it's not like, you go in and take over, the municipality, the municipal care homes are still, the most widely spread ones, but, we could come in with a private operator. We work with a nonprofit operator. So we actually, help solve the demographic challenge. And then at the same time also show, how care can be, and also how it can be, with a home-like feeling, maybe also raising the bar for the public or municipal care homes going forward. And then the second one was sustainability. NREP is the most ambitious company in the real estate sector on sustainability. So that's a huge part of our journey as well. And that appeals to me.
Right. So, that's one of the things I want to ask a bit more about NREP, right? So when I only knew about NREP when you joined there. So, right, I hadn't heard of the company before. I looked it up and looked up the website, and everything I see and everything I read about on social media about NREP is very, very inspiring. And it seems like a company far apart from the rest of them in the industry, right? Both in terms of the ambition, in terms of sustainability, but also, I guess, the culture and the way they look at people and employees in society and so on. Also, the way I think the chairman communicates these things. So, want to hear from someone working on the inside. What is different about NREP as someone working there and doing your job every day?
Yeah, I mean, you can say in the big scheme of things, it's that NREP wants to make a difference, on sustainability, on urban life, wants to help solve some of these huge challenges that we face in society. So that's on the big scale. Personally, for me, I also wanted to work in a company where there's not far from word to action. I think that's also one of the things that characterizes NREP, that it's very much able to take action. It's not just talk for years and then nothing happens. If you get an idea, if you have an ambition, then you can actually see almost instantly that we work on that ambition. So I find that interesting. And you can say I have good close colleagues. That's I'm a team leader. I really enjoy that part, and also I mean, I have one of my main values is that it has to be fun to go to work. It has to give meaning. So I really try to create that myself, and also really appreciate my colleagues.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, having worked with you before and kind of following your journey, I can clearly sense a huge difference in your, energy and moods now than what it was maybe a few years ago. So I guess it's testament to the place with which you work and the values that you said match. Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I had a little tour to consulting engineering firms, but I went back on the client side. I think that's where I belong if I work with construction. I think that's the where you can really make, you can make a bigger difference on the client side, or at least that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I also engage in Green Building Council Denmark. I'm elected to one of the committees setting the CO2 targets for the future sustainability certification. So that's also really interesting. And that's my drive in that is also to try to make a difference for the entire sector. And Mikkel, our
Chairman.
you can say, yeah, our chairman, he is actually on the board of Green Building Council. So I'm working the ranks lower down, but on the committee that sets the CO2 targets. So I find that very interesting and giving to work with people across the sector. Yeah.
Green Building Council. So for someone like me who doesn't know about this sector, so is that like one of the governing bodies for the industry in Denmark, or is it a
Yes. Yeah, Green Building Council has, you can say, the sustainability certification of buildings in Denmark. It's called DGNB.
Okay.
So that is the main body for sustainability certifications, which is more up in time now than it has ever been. And the interesting part is, when we look back, in maybe the past 5 years, getting a sustainability certification, has had many different elements. But the difference with the new manual coming out from New Year's is that we tighten the requirements in regards to the CO2 footprint. Now that needs to, weigh heavier in that certification process to actually move the industry. So that is the main certification body in Denmark.
In Denmark, wow.
On sustainability, yeah.
And does every new construction project need to get the certification, or is it more like like the old CMMI levels where you certify yourself to show how advanced you are in that?
Well, you don't have to get it. I mean, it's voluntary, but if you don't have it on your buildings, I mean, you will be behind on points when you move in the real estate market. I mean, that's a requirement, you can almost say now to live up to certain sustainability and CO2 requirements.
Right.
If you want to excel.
Very interesting. Cool. So I want to kind of shift now from your growing up years to university to construction to more of more on the personal side of yours, right? Which is something I really look up to you and kind of find great inspiration from. And thanks for kind of opening up to this, right? Which I hope will serve as inspiration to anyone who's listening to this. So one of, I guess, the big pivoting points in life was, when losing your husband, right? Of course, something that would impact any family, any person in a huge way. And you had two young kids at that point. Could you talk about, if you don't mind, that phase of life? How was dealing with that?
Yeah. Well, I think before I talk about the loss, I just like to share the joy of meeting my husband, Jan.
Please.
Well, I mean, meeting my husband, Jan, is one of the most precious parts of my life. And I'm so grateful to have felt that kind of love.
Very
and I think when someone or feels a loss, and including myself, I think the magnitude of that sorrow is oftentimes a mirror of the love. I mean, the more you love somebody, the more deeply you will feel the sorrow when you lose somebody.
Where did you meet Jan? Was it in the US or in Denmark?
No, it was actually kind of funny because I was definitely not looking for somebody at the moment. I had just had a relationship that had broken off, so I was just going on a sailing trip with a friend of mine. She had been invited by her study friend, and he had invited one of his friends.
Okay.
That was Jan. So, totally random. We were invited to the same sailing trip. We had never met each other before. When we came to the harbor, Philip, that was Jan's friend, asked us to fold one of the sails. And that's the first time we saw each other. And I mean, this may sound ridiculous, but it was instant love.
Love at first sight.
It was love at first sight. And we spent time on the sailing trip, and then 2 weeks after we came home, we actually moved in together. Jan proposed in Philip, that was his friend. He was hot air balloon pilot, so he proposed to me up in his hot air balloon a few months after. And the wedding was set 4 months after we had met. So it's just one of those things where everything just falls into place for two people. I mean, we had both found our soulmate. And just to give a little bit of intro also, the day before our wedding, Jan, my husband, my future husband at that time, was unexpectedly diagnosed with leukemia. He had been at a routine check at the doctor's office 2 days before, so it just came completely out of the blue the day before we were marrying.
Oh my God.
And Jan, I mean, he was just, a very, you can say, caring and generous person. He gave me, the option to opt out and not getting married. But I mean, that thought was never on my mind. I mean, I stand by the ones I love and vice versa. So we had a wonderful wedding, a really special one because, we had these, opposing feelings, with the, extreme happiness and at the same time a lot of uncertainty. And in the 4 years after that, Jan was, getting different treatments for leukemia, but never getting cured because you couldn't do that. But after 4 years, they found a stem cell donor in Germany, and he had a stem cell transplantation at Rigshospitalet in Copenhagen, and that was actually the way he could get cured. He would, basically get a whole new immune system from that stem cell donor. So he had actually been, or we had been through, that process. It had taken 7 months. Out of 4 out of those months, he had been in isolation at Rigshospitalet. So it had been quite a journey and uncertain. But Jan was actually cured by leukemia. The cancer was gone, and he was working his way out. Getting back to his prior strength.
Okay.
But then all of a sudden, one day, I had just talked to him an hour before. He died very suddenly and unexpected of something, an unrelated complication, you can say. So he died of a heart attack within 1 hour, and then he was, torn away from us.
Wow.
He was only 35 years old. And as you just mentioned, our sons were very young. Valdemar, the youngest one, was only 7 weeks old, and the oldest one, Carl, was 2 years old. So, personally, for me, or for everybody in the family, I mean, we lost a husband, a father, a son, a brother-in-law, a friend. And of course, that completely, you can say, pull the rug away under your feet. Of course, that's devastating. But then at the same time, in the middle of our loss of Jan, there was also the most beautiful things in life, our 2 sons. So really, that's what really kept me afloat, you can say, my 2 sons. And I quickly decided with myself that my 2 sons, Carl and Valdemar, should have a good life. They should get lots of love from me and my family and Jan's family, and they should not be limited by the loss of their father at an early age or at a young age. I mean, I think that was quite a promise I made to myself, but that is really what has guided me. I mean, I would lie if I said I hadn't been out in the ropes, but I always, focused on, having a good, you can say, every day with Carl and Valdemar, being present. We lived in a small house, so when I was cooking in the kitchen, they were playing, right by my feet. So even though I was the lone parent, and we just had a lot of closeness together,
Right.
and I think we will have that for the rest of our lives. And then also, coming back to the construction part, I actually decided to build a big garage. A few months later, so when my youngest one, Valdemar, he was only a few months old still, he was in the baby stroller, and I was just building this huge garage. So that took me a few months, but it just gave meaning to me, doing something, creating something. And then, it's not like I didn't feel anything. I definitely did. And I'm very true to my feelings, and I've always been, but, it just made sense to me. And then, I also decided to, I was asked to participate in a book about losing your spouse at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So I contributed with 1 out of 10 stories because I had actually looked myself for some, relevant literature, but couldn't find it. So I thought that I would like to contribute and then maybe help somebody else in a similar situation. And I have also, over the years, I've participated in Godmorgen Denmark and shared my story, and also, heard back from people both in regards to the book and the TV program that they had actually related and felt some comfort, felt inspired, and I have written with some people and talked to them. So just really trying to use our story or my story to actually also help other people in a similar situation.
Absolutely. And that was my real thinking about asking about this phase of your life, in the hope that it would inspire more people, right? And give them some courage. And what was this book that you mentioned, the name of the book?
Vi er her stadig. We are still here.
Okay. Would you mind if I share the link when I put this?
Yeah, sure, you can do that. Yeah, it's written by Linda Jacobsen, who herself lost her husband at a young age. I think a few years after I did. She's the author of it, and I still actually write to her from time to time, or write with her. So
if you put that phase, summarize that phase of your life, from losing Jan when your sons were so young to to the phase till where I guess they were maybe teenagers. What would you summarize that as? Would you take, what would your advice be to someone who's lost their spouse and has kids, a single dad or mom? What would your advice be? Take it one day at a time, or, make that mental resolve that you want to be for them. What would your advice be?
Yeah, there are just so many pieces of advice that would be good to give, but I guess, one of the, it may sound simple, but to take care of your loved ones, lower the bar. You don't have to be perfect in all kinds of life. I focused on being present, getting food on the table, being a loving mom, but then, I may not vacuum, very often. There may be a lot of other things that I slacked on. Because you can't really, span it all. So it's all about, choosing your priorities, and also get help. I had a supporting family. I also talked to a psychologist after Jan's death, and actually again a few years later. And it was not like I was in crisis, but it was actually a good conversation partner. Again, I like to reflect on life. So, so do, and also be open about it. I have been very open about my feelings, my sorrow. I've been open to my boys about their father, Jan. I have actually written, it's almost like a book about him, everything I could remember, both to free some space on my own hard disk, so to speak, but also to make sure that they would never have to think about, who was my father? So they actually know him very well. Right. And be true to your feelings. It's not some phase that you go through. I think it's more a condition that you live with. It's something, that you carry with you all of your life. So it's all about, making the best of it, you can say. Yeah. And look
That's for
for
sure.
opportunities. Yeah.
Good.
Even when it looks, very difficult, there's always a way out. Jan, he used to say, "Alting ordner sig, everything is going to be okay." And I have thought about that phrase many times. So
There's always a way out, and everything's going to be okay. Yeah, something to remember. But I very much relate to the first one of the first things you said about, it's, you don't have to set the bar too high. It's all about being present, and that's something I realized myself as being a parent to two kids. One tends to think that you need to do so much more to them, take them out here and there to amusement parks and all of that. But sometimes all they need is for you to sit next to them and just be there, and they're just happy, right? So that's something worth remembering, I guess, for us, for busy parents.
yeah.
Great. The other topic I want to talk about was, like many of us, or most of us, all of us, we faced difficult, stressful situations in life, both at work and on a personal level. And I've seen you going through one of those phases, and that was. I remember that because I was under this false impression that, someone as like you, who's really strong physically, mentally, wouldn't be affected by things like this. But that was a learning experience for me, also, that anyone can go through difficult situations. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, so when you go through a phase, of course there are phases where the stuff lasts for a day, but some phases where it lasts longer, and each of us face different symptoms, right? When we go through difficult situations. So I was curious about, how do you know when you are going through a phase which is not this temporary one? How do you sense that, and what do you do to kind of get out of that phase?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a simple one, but it's actually a good indication. When I get annoyed when my dogs pull on the leash. but it's true. But I can go a little deeper than that. Of course, I have tried many different situations, and the funny part is that I can actually span over an obscene amount of work, task, uncertainties, and not be stressed. Right. I can be tired, I can be exhausted, but not be stressed. However, I can be affected by stress if I'm in an environment or a situation where there's not a match in values. And maybe where I do not feel safe and respected, that can affect me with stress. I mean, I think we all can relate to being stressed at different times of our lives. And when I get affected by stress, I mean, I can physically feel some unrest in my body. I have an elevated heart rate also when I'm resting. My sleep can deteriorate. I may wake up in the middle of the night. I mean, it's not just once, but maybe over longer periods, wake up. And then the one with my dogs when they pull on the leash. But you can say, I actually get physical symptoms when I get stressed. And then you can say the one with the dogs and the leash. I mean, maybe it's also, you can say maybe I also get annoyed by some things that are unrelated. That's
Right. Okay, interesting.
So So what I have actually learned, over the years, because I have been, under a lot of, you can say, pressure, uncertainties, and also been affected by stress, is that I have to take care of myself. Well, like I mentioned earlier, there's some things I have to do, and then there are some things that would be nice to do, but not necessarily have to, and those I just lower the bar on. I have certain knobs I can screw on or turn, and I do that. And then also, learn to say no and actually take care of yourself. Also in the workplace, I mean, not many workplaces there's actually somebody doing that for you. So you have to be able to do that for yourself. I mean, if you're ahead of something where you think this is too much, I mean, then dare to say no. And I mean, unless there are lives at stake, then most things can probably wait a little bit. That can be difficult to see when you're right in it. So really also about prioritizing. And then I must say, this is also very fundamental, but sleep. Sleep when you're tired. I mean, I sleep when I'm tired. Sleep is a wonderful medicine for both body and mind. I think it's actually something that is not getting enough attention in our society, because I think a lot of us sleep way too little. After a period where I had been affected by stress, I may have slept, I don't know, maybe on average 6 hours a night, 5-6 hours. But now I try actually to average about 8 hours per night.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can exist on 6, but I just feel so much better on 8.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And like you said, I mean, sleep is so underrated, as like you said, as a medicine, right? I mean, there's this culture of hustle, right? You need to hustle to do this and do that, and sleep. Who needs sleep, right? You can do it 4 hours, 6 hours, but I think there's no recognition of the value of sleep. And I saw this book called Why We Sleep. I forgot the name of the author, but I have it, and that really shows, the absolute value of sleep, and the benefits of it. So I think that's very, very underrated. And for me personally, I think there's one of the big things that's impacted me living in Denmark is the focus on your own fitness, right? Because fitness plays a huge role, of course, physically, but also mentally. And for me, when I've sensed that, things are getting a bit too much into my head, then the more busy or stressful a day I have, the more I have a need to do something physically, like go for a run or work out or do something. Because then I think for me, that helps me break that mental hamster that keeps spinning, right? Where you're kind of going through the same problem or situation again and again and again. Right. So working out physically helps me break that link even for that amount of period. That helps me recharge. Because if without that, then the wheel is just spinning on and on. I think that's eventually probably what leads to stress and all of those things. Great. But thanks for sharing your learnings. And so all of this, the challenges you face and so on, how has it impacted your sons? The way they look at life and who they are today, seeing their mom go through these difficult challenges and coming out stronger.
Yeah, well, I reflect on this one. Well, first of all, I think I think we have gotten the best out of it. My sons are doing great in life. Of course, I might be biased as their mom, but they are, bright, creative, caring, understanding. I couldn't be more proud. And of course, they themselves feel, a great longing. But I also think, I think that when they look at me as a mom, they see, a present mom, a caring mom. I always have their back. They also see, a mom full of drive. Nothing is impossible. We just do it. So I think they actually get something positive out of it. And of course, they've seen me also with ups and downs. But I think that is actually a strength for them. I mean, they have, more knowledge on life than most children their age. It's not like they're young adults, but, they just have experienced so much more. They have their own laws, which is also development for them, from when they were really small, till they were, 5-10 years old. Now they're 15 and 17, so they are growing into to young men. They have a lot of, I think of course they miss their father, but I think they also feel that they have really, they have him in their heart, and they have me, who's actually shown them that life is good and there are many possibilities. Also, when they were younger or when they were small, I took them to this organization called Børn, Unge and Sorg, Children, Young and Sorrow, which is a place that helps children with, when they have either somebody who is seriously ill or have lost a family member. And I remember the psychologist, she pointed to a wall with a lot of drawings, and then she said to my boys, do you see all these drawings? And they said yes. And then she said, well, each one of these drawings is made by a child that has lost a family member. So I think at a very early point, they actually felt, okay, we're not alone with this kind of loss. And I think I have taught them just to be, open about Jan, talking about him, remembering him, staying close to his family, visiting his grave, and also always try to draw upon positive things and combine it with some fun trips. So I think actually when they look at me, yes, they have seen somebody or me who has been, sad, but I also try to protect them, when they were smaller. For instance, if they went to bed at 7, then I may sit at night and really, cry, but I wouldn't, expose them to this sadness 24 hours a day, because that would have, affected their lives. Of course, they've seen it, but it hasn't taken over their entire childhood. So so I've really, you can say, thought a lot about how they would perceive me and also try to protect them. So and one of the main values that I think they have actually gotten from me is to, this is one of my core values I always preach, is to treat others like you would like to be treated yourself. And then, this drive, and I can see they have it, they are creating their own lives now. And that's just a huge joy for me.
I can see that makes you proud. We would make anyone proud. Yeah.
And then, they also think, I'm a little bit crazy, in the fun sense, when we go to, Greenland for a month, with our backpacks, and I'm dragging 35 kilos and I have, 15 kilos extra of freeze-dried food, but I just want to give them this experience, and I also want to get that experience myself. So, I'm going out of the ordinary to create possibilities. And, also as a parent, it's when you're alone, you have to be, the one, bringing them up. You have to be the fun one and the more, you could say adult one,
strict one.
Yeah. So have to meet both. But I think all in all, they have. It's a strength for them in their life going forward, I think.
I have to say, it absolutely hats off to you for bringing them the way you have, despite all the challenges. I can sense my own life with my wife and the kids. Playing a good cop and bad cop is not easy, even if one of us have to play that role one at a time. So having to do both of that, it's just I have no words. So go ahead, you're saying something.
No, I was just going to say I've tried my best. That's the best one can do.
So what does the future hold, Rikke? When your sons, they're almost grown-ups and probably might move out. So what does the future hold? More adventures, more Vasalopas, or more marathons for you?
I don't know. That's also a little bit of the beauty of it. Some things. Well, as a mom, I want to see my sons flourish in life. Let them be guided by their interests and what they want. So that's one thing I would like to say. And then on a personal level, I'd like to stay healthy and also active. I love the active life and love being outdoors. I hope I can still ski in the mountains and run when I'm 90. It's a huge part of me, this nature and this athletic approach. That I hope I will never have to give up. So to stay healthy. And then I have a dream actually that I've had for I don't know, at least 10, 15 years, that I would like to be able to retire a little bit early, to devote myself to be a track coach for children and young people. That's a huge dream of mine. So I hope to do that someday. Maybe also even before I retire, when my sons grow up. But that's something that I've actually thought about for many years. That would be fun to do. I haven't done it so far, because if I go into something like that, I want to be able to devote myself completely. And with the practicalities, you can say, we'd have in our life, I wouldn't be able to guarantee that I could be, at every single practice and really be there every time, because, there's so many uncertainties in life. But that's a dream of mine. And, like to be inspired by people around me, and also hopefully inspire other people, and just keep trying to make a difference, on small and large scales. That's
I hope all your dreams are fulfilled. And knowing you, I'm sure you will fulfill them, given the drive and focus and determination you have. And in terms of inspiration, you've inspired many people, certainly inspired me. And it takes great courage to open up and share your story the way you have. So thank you, Rikke. It's been a pleasure.
You too, Ranjit. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Ranjit.